Hello everybody and welcome to the Assessment 3 Flipped Collaborate. Today we'll be talking about your final assessment, which is a folio. It's actually part B of the folio. You've already submitted part A, and part B is an extension or further development of that folio, which is a learning unit. So there is a word limit of 2,000 words for this assessment, plus or minus the usual 10%, with a weighting of 40%. So quite a big one. So hopefully you've already started doing a bit of work on it. It's due at 5 p.m. on Friday the 10th of February, which happens to be my birthday. So I'm hoping for lots of really great assessments for my birthday. Thank you. The assessment task is the second component of this folio, with the focus being your capacity to apply what you have learned about teaching the arts in the primary classroom. So throughout this assessment task, you'll have plenty of opportunity to demonstrate your capacity to generate plans and resources for your future practice as a teacher of the arts. There are a number of interrelated components in this folio. So hopefully once you've worked out your structure for your unit plan, it will all seem a little clearer for you. It is a unit of work and it must include 3 of the 5 arts forms. That's dance, drama, music, visual art or media arts. So make sure that you do choose 3 different art forms, and you will use each one of those art forms for a lesson for 3 weeks. So it's 3 lessons for 3 weeks. So that would be a total of 9 lessons. You will supplement this unit plan with additional statements to support your plan, to justify your plan and to explain your strategies. We are offering you a bit of a word count guide. However, it is only a guide and you can sort of be a bit flexible with the word count, but it's just, I guess, the guide is there just to keep your word limits in check so that you're not spending too much of your word count in one area at the expense of the other. So there are 4 main components to this assessment. The first one is, of course, the unit plan. So the plan of work is where you choose 3 of the 5 art strands, and the length of the unit is for 3 weeks. So imagine that you're a teacher of the arts and you have a bunch of students, you're teaching them for 3 weeks. You get 3 lessons each week, but each one of those lessons must be a different art form. So for example, you might teach dance, drama and art, and there will be a new lesson every week for those particular learning areas. So you need to choose a pretext again, or you can use the same pretext. It could be that you decide on a theme. So let's say, for example, your pretext was a dance all about being in the forest, and you might decide that your theme is all about the forest. So you might choose your pretext, you might use your pretext again, but then you might expand on it with further elements of that theme. So it could include painting trees, for example, or going out on an excursion and observing nature. So you could still keep the pretext that you already used, but expand on it further. Or you could also choose a brand new pretext if you find that the one that you already had in folio part A is not suitable anymore. The main thing that we're going to be looking at is your ability to build upon what you've already learned in folio part A and extend that into a whole unit of work. Okay. Your 3 arts areas do need to connect as well in some way. So that's why you have your theme or your pretext as a way of connecting your 3 arts areas. So we just talked about the forest being a theme. It could be under the sea is the theme. The pretext might be some music that's related to being under the sea, from The Little Mermaid or something like that. And then your 3 arts areas will draw on that pretext or on that theme as a way of getting started, of inspiring the learning, inspiring the creativity. So if it was under the sea, you might have, you might look at a dance, teaching dance around being under the sea. Your art area might be looking at painting with watercolour using under the seascapes, and then music might be playing with instruments that make sort of an under the sea type sounds or music. So just using a theme to connect the 3 different arts areas. You do need to select one content descriptor, so you'll need to look up ACARA, the Australian curriculum, for your content descriptors in each of the art strands that you are including. So choose the year level, so just 1 year level for all of your lessons. So let's say, for example, the year level is grade 6. And then you'll need to include a statement of your intended learning outcomes. Do draw on ACARA to help you write those learning outcomes. They don't have to be word for word. You could actually rewrite them in your own words. But if you do use ACARA or any other curriculum documents, make sure that you're referencing them. Spend about 100 words on stating what your learning outcomes are for the entire unit. So these are the achievements or the learnings that you are aiming for your students to have by the time your unit of work is finished. So it's what students are working towards, and if you were assessing them, you would use those learning outcomes to measure the success or the child's success on whether they had actually achieved those outcomes. So a bit of an overview, what the key aims are of the unit and what the focus is for each week across all of those arts areas. No more than 250 words for that, approximately. So you have an overview for the entire unit. There should also be an overview of each of the lessons within the unit. So a bit of a description of what the lessons entail or what they include over those 3 weeks. You should also list all of your resources, and that might include the pretext or the stimuli, any texts or books that you're using, any programs, any online websites. So make sure you're listing all your resources and referencing those if you have a reference for them. It would be okay if you kind of modified existing resources or even created your own if you're feeling very confident to do that. But do make sure that they are included as part of the unit plan. You have about approximately 1,400 words there for the whole of the unit plan. Okay, once you have the unit plan all complete, we also need some supporting statements to go with those. Spend about 200 words justifying your pedagogical approaches. So in other words, why you have chosen particular teaching methods, particular learning models, strategies that you've chosen in your unit. How do you justify those? Why have you chosen those in order to reach those learning outcomes? So keeping in mind what you're wanting your children or your students to achieve, what teaching strategies have you chosen and why have you chosen them? It's not really quite enough just to say what your strategies are. You really do need to justify them and make sure that you are drawing on literature to do so. It's very important that you include some explanation, about 200 words worth, of how you will cater for diverse learners. What does that mean? Well, you know, if you're in a classroom, obviously all of your children aren't a one size fits all. There will be some children who might be more artistically inclined. There may be some who need more of a challenge. There may be some that maybe have a disability of some kind. You might need to consider cultural backgrounds. You might need to consider children's different social skills and abilities. So just keep in mind that you'll have a whole range of learners in your classroom, and how will you cater for these? How will you consider all different types of learners? Maybe different learners who have particular learning styles that they prefer. Maybe some children are more mathematically or inclined. rather than being artistic. So, you know, there may be some very confident children who are comfortable with the drama and some who are very nervous and shy to perform in front of others. So just try to imagine, you know, all the types of learners that you might have in there. Obviously, you can't cover them all in 200 words, but at least you have 200 words to show us that you are considering, you know, a diverse group of children, that you are keeping in mind that you're going to have some children in there with different backgrounds and different needs. And again, of course, making sure that you're drawing on scholarly literature to support your ideas. You also need to have a statement, about 200 words, that justifies your choice of resources. So why did you choose your particular resources in order to reach those learning outcomes with those particular children, and keeping in mind the age of your children, and making sure that your resource or resources are appropriate for the age. Also considering, you know, how you're going to deliver the learnings, or how you're teaching, so how you're going to use those resources in order to support the children's learnings. Okay, that's the assessment criteria there. That's taken straight from the assessment sheet, so you can have a very close look at that. Obviously, you're being assessed on your ability to plan, teach and assess in primary arts education, the ability to justify strategies, resources and tools for learning, and to understand theories. The tricky part is always making those links between what your understandings are through research, looking at theories of learning and theories of art, and art learning in particular, or arts learning, and connecting those with how they would actually translate into the classroom. So it's applying your theory to practice. And also concentrating also on making sure your academic writing is of high standard. If you've had any feedback about that in your previous 2 assessments, I would strongly encourage you to get some support with that, to make sure that your final assessment with 40%, which is quite a high percentage, is you're giving yourself your best opportunity to do well in that criteria. Okay, you will have a chance to ask lots of questions at the question and answer session next week, but I'm just predicting a few questions that might come our way. For example, how does part A relate to part B? That could get a little bit confusing. So I did mention a little bit before, but what you should really be doing is, as soon as you get that feedback for assessment A, part A, please use that feedback to help refine part B. I know you will all be working away on this, and you know, already, and getting a really good start on it, but do seek feedback from your ELA even in the discussions, and because your ELAs will be doing the marking at the moment, so they'll probably start to see some areas that overall might need a little bit more work or a bit more support in part B. So get those questions up on the discussion board if you can. That will help a lot. I think I did explain before that you are using the plan that you created for assessment 2 as the basis for this unit plan. So you can't just resubmit it. It does need to be much more developed, but it starts as a basis. So if you've used a pretext and designed a bit of a small learning unit or small learning plan, it can now be expanded into the whole 3-week unit. And now you have to also bring in the other 2 arts areas. So you'll have the art area that you've already concentrated on, and now you're bringing in 2 other arts areas and applying the theme or the pretext to those other 2 areas, and hopefully connecting the 3 areas together in your unit. Okay, I hope that makes sense, but do get your questions ready for the session next week, the Collaborate, and also post them on the boards as well. Okay, question number 2, Can we use the Swinburne lesson plan template as a base? I'm quite sure most of you would have used Swinburne lesson plans by now. If you have, you're welcome to use that as a base, but keep in mind that the lesson plan is just that. It's a lesson plan, it's not a unit plan. So you'll have to have a close look at what is missing or what is not covered if you're using it as a lesson plan, and redesign it a little bit. We also have the ELAs, that is, and myself have a unit plan template that you can use, but it's not compulsory. It's up to you if you want to use it or not. So we'll make sure you get those on the discussion boards. Do I have to use the same pretext as for Part A? No, you don't have to use the same pretext. It might make it easier for you to do that, but if it makes it more difficult for you to do that, and you have actually a better idea that you'd rather use this time, that's fine as well. We just really need to see your ability to use what you've already learned through Part A and develop that further into a whole unit plan. Can I use Fox as my pretext? We were a little bit surprised with Assessment 2 that a few people chose to use Fox. We didn't state clearly that that shouldn't be done. So if anyone did that, then we will allow it. But we don't recommend it at all. It's much harder for you to demonstrate your own understandings if you haven't come up with your own pretext. If you're using Fox, it's very hard for us to see what you've actually created yourself in terms of the pretext and the learning, and what you've being able to take from the learning material. So please don't use Fox. Although you wouldn't have been penalised for it in Assessment 2, we would encourage you not to use it in Assessment 3. We would like to see your own original ideas if we can. If you have already used Fox in Assessment 2 and you can't see any way around going forward in Assessment 3 without continuing to use Fox, please just send your ELA an email and we can see what we can work out. But the main thing for us is that we see that you are demonstrating your own learnings, and we can see a bit of your own creativity in this unit plan. Do I have to use the 3 art forms? Very simple answer to that, yes, you do. You need to use 3 different art forms, and each one of these art forms is used every week for the 3 weeks. Okay, so we just have the rubric to go through. We will go through this more at the question and answer session next week, but it's always important that you, at the very least, make sure that you have everything covered at the pass level. If you miss any of these criteria points, unfortunately, we're not able to pass you. So make sure you have a very good look at this. You need to demonstrate an understanding of the practice of 3 of the 5 art forms. So I've said that a few times now, but I'm going to say it again because it would be a disastrous mistake if you only included 1 or 2 art forms. It needs to be 3. All components of the plan are included, and the descriptions are sufficient enough to enable the reader to understand most aspects of the unit. So we need to be able to, clearly understand how this unit would work, how it would be implemented, and what specific resources would be used for student learning. The teaching and the assessment practices need to be appropriate for the year level. So make sure that your strategies and your resources are age appropriate, and if you need guidance on that, again, I would look to ACARA for that. Sections 2 and 4 clearly demonstrate your ability to justify and analyse your choices, and these sections must go beyond just describing what you're going to do. You need to justify and explain why you're using the teaching strategies and why you're using the resources, and these discussions need to draw on research. We do need to see in-text citations throughout your assessment. If we don't see any referencing or in-text citations, you will not be able to pass. So please make sure that you are using theory to underpin your learning unit plan. Conventions of written English are generally adhered to. So this is what I was talking about before, making sure your academic writing is up to scratch. This is a final year unit. So, or at least in the final years. So we do expect to see, you know, very good academic writing, including good sentence structure, grammar should be all in order, and punctuation, etc. So make sure you give your assessment a good old proofread, or give it to someone else as a second eye to look over as well. Okay. And there must be evidence provided throughout. All right, I'm going to leave you all to have a look at the assessment sheet and look closely at the credit, distinction and high distinction levels. If you have any questions about any of those criteria points, or there's anything you don't understand, please shoot through those questions onto the discussion boards, and also bring them along to the collaborate session next week. Okay, good luck and happy assessment writing, everybody. Thank you.